If you would have walked up to me 2 years ago and told me that I wouldn't just be playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare but enjoying it, I'd be asking you, where did I go so wrong in life that I'm playing old Call of Duty games, because I thought you'd be talking about Call of Duty 4. As for the question, where did I go so wrong in life? Well, there's a lot of great ways to answer it, and while I was thinking of a suitable counter-argument for the longest time, which included a lengthy discussion on why we should rename the new reboot to Call of Duty 4 Squared Modern Warfare, I remember that the old games in the series are dirt cheap now. Considering that there's probably going to be a sequel to this Modern Warfare, and I have absolutely no idea how they're going to have several games called Modern Warfare 2, I might as well hit peak clickbait and talk about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 years before anybody else. Besides, if you watched any of my other videos, I like to add surprises in my review. So, surprise! It's the Wii version! I already owned it for the other consoles as well, but I refuse to pay a fee just to access online out of principle, so screw the Xbox version. I was thinking about playing the PS3 version, but then I remembered that Activision games didn't actually use Nintendo servers after authentication, and that they hosted their own servers instead of relying on Wi-Fi connection. This way, I'm basically playing the last Wii Online games in existence, and I'm not sure how long they're gonna stay up. I used to play GoldenEye 007 for the Wii a lot, but Activision decided that killing its servers was a good idea, and now the only way to play online is by using some debugging feature that was left in the game, and it's against some of the best players left. So maybe there's still a few noobs left on Modern Warfare 3, or at the very least, I'm gonna be the noob. Unfortunately, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 for the Nintendo Wii doesn't support GameCube controllers, only a Wiimote with nunchuck and a Classic Controller Pro. Yeah, I use the Wiimote. Because of that, my crosshair won't be in the middle of the screen, and while I could theoretically make it be in the middle by modifying the Wiimote controls or by going to a classic controller, that kind of defeats the purpose of using a Wiimote to play a point-and-click adventure on my TV. Besides, using a Wiimote was genuinely a better experience. While I don't quite get the full range of what's on my screen, especially since I'm playing in 4x3, the improved control that I get with this is far closer to a keyboard and mouse. Granted, it took me a few hours to get used to and I had to twiddle with the settings some, but there's a lot of options to make it work for you. And since I know people are going to ask, yes, I did try to use a Classic Controller Pro that I bought from China just for this video. And while the controller stuff was shockingly fine and responsive, I went back to the Wiimote. It's not perfect, but it allows for far more subtle movements, and after getting used to it for a few hours, I like it just a little bit more. I just have to close the blinds, otherwise the light messes up the infrared sensors. So yeah, Call of Duty. I've had a good half dozen potential candidates for games I've planned on reviewing, and this one just kinda crept up on me and then took a month and a half out of my life. It's not that I fell in love with the game and couldn't stop playing it, I kept procrastinating as I didn't exactly have a good history with Call of Duty. I never played it when it was extremely popular, which is when I was in high school, but there's an arguably good reason for that. Back then, I had an aura of arrogance relating to the series, as if I was too good to play it, and that's because I ended up getting several years worth of stupid, asinine, and racist comments thrown my way due to my nationality and its representation in COD. As such, hearing shit about the No Russian mission got on my nerves for the year that everyone loved Modern Warfare 2, and I vowed to never play that game ever in my entire life. The point of the story is that when stupid racists associate themselves with the franchise, it's kinda hard not to think of the stupid racists every time you hear about said franchise. As a result, I've kept away from Call of Duty intentionally, and at this point, the series is genuinely new and fresh for me, and I've got absolutely no frame of reference at all other than comparing this game to other first-person shooters I've played. So yeah, with that, let's just start the campaign. The story starts off with you being rescued, suffering from heavy wounds, while flashbacks occur to moments you would have had to own a different console to experience, because Modern Warfare 2 never came out on the Wii, but it came out for the DS. But anyway, because you're awesome, you survive, and with that you start World War 3. Or maybe the game just changed who you're playing as, the plot's kinda schizophrenic and who wants to follow. So, for your first mission back, whoever the fuck you are, you go into the front lines of an all-out skirmish between an invading Russia and New York City, and your job is to take out a massive signal jammer that was installed without anybody noticing or caring about permits or such. This sounds kind of interesting so far, because while I expect it to be America wins, it shows that both sides are competent at what they're doing. You come out of an overturned military vehicle and the game is instantly bombastic with a rocket hitting a skyscraper, taking out a massive chunk while the screen and audio rumble intensely as you watch debris fall to the ground. Then your comrade in arms jumps out of the car as well, throws you a magazine to load into your M4, and after this, the entire game becomes a shooting gallery as you mow down Russian soldiers wave after wave because you're an American badass. You run through buildings, getting a kill count in this one level that surpasses the vast majority of actual war veterans. And then I realized that just because this game presents you as one of a tactical group of one-man armies, yeah, you're not actually immortal. I play this game a bit more cautiously at this point, but the entire level is just pushing through wave after wave of baddies. After a short level load, the next part is a stock exchange, and I would say that it's a pretty good set piece to fight in, except I can't see shit. Honestly, I just ended up sprinting through this section because it's all fun and games, except I can't tell who's shooting me. I should talk about the combat. The combat is extremely basic for a first-person shooter by having spread increase the more you fire your weapon instead of recoil, but that might be because I'm using the Wii mode and it might mess up the motion controls if it moves your cursor all over the place. I'd say that it's a very solid implementation of first-person shooter mechanics as well. It just suffers from not being very memorable. The constant hail of gunfire makes it impossible to figure out what's going on by audio cues, and your own bullets don't sound like they do as much damage as they should. Okay, well, the guns are good, they just never feel good, but I guess that's mildly better than having enemies be bullet sponges. The AI is also the exact level of serviceable. They're not competent, but they really shouldn't be if you're trying to play off being a one-man army, especially if you have to suffer from gamepad aiming. In the game's never-ending attempts to one-up itself, after blowing up the radio dish, which theoretically would be your mission completed, let's bust out the champagne, you end up in some stupid firefight across buildings. This becomes generally painful because of the graphics, which I'll get to at some point. I've got a lot to say about the graphics of this game, but the low resolution mixed with the Wiimote aiming, it's hard to hit precise shots across what feels like an 8-lane highway with several stories difference in height. But the hyperactivity disorder this game has suddenly asked me to use a drone, which I thought was a great idea as it would help me take out the enemies without suffering so much. Yeah, I completely misunderstood what was going on. Turns out we're being attacked by a helicopter with armor 2 deep for a 5.56x45 round. Thankfully it's scripted so it doesn't pose any actual threat. I blow the helicopter up, hop on an escape chopper, and am instantly thrown into a minigun. Here's my first real problem with this game. It does not let you take a breather at all. If you want to take a break from the constant onslaught of all of your senses, you hit that pause menu, but right now it's time to end up in an aerial firefight between two helicopters because that's exactly what we needed. Oh yeah, sure, it looks great and is a great set piece, which is what you'd expect from the first level in a game, but that's all it is. It's exhausting at this point, and I'm only half an hour into the campaign. But then the helicopter crashes into you. If you know how helicopters work, this should be a death sentence, but no normal game would have you play as a bunch of alleged war heroes that all end up dying in the first mission. So I guess your helicopter magically fixes itself, nobody falls out, and you fly away to fight another day. It would be an interesting take to kill off all the characters in a helicopter crash though, however, consider that this is the third entry in the trilogy. If everyone died in the first campaign mission, that was the end, Modern Warfare 3 would still be talked about today for its horrendous writing. Anyway, now you have air support bombing New York City, but you're gonna need naval support now, and to get that, you have to get rid of the Russians' naval fleet at New York's coast. Thankfully, their navy of about 40 ships strong has a fatal flaw in its execution: a single nuclear submarine underwater. Clearly, the best way to stop their entire navy is to literally go in with your squad through a flooded tunnel, infiltrate said nuclear submarine, and launch warheads onto all the enemy ships from underneath. I won't lie, for what it is, it's extremely atmospheric, especially given the Wii's hardware, but I was ready to shut off the campaign at this point. This storyline treats everyone like an absolute idiot, while it oozes an atmosphere that smells like every US Army's recruitment center's wet dream. If there's a fleet of boats at the shores of New York, only one of which is a nuclear submarine, it's hard for me to say which side is dumber at this war. Russia, for not having a backup nuclear submarine for a literal invasion of the United States, or the US for not using their own submarines as a countermeasure. Alternatively, I'm willing to believe that Russia is so far technologically advanced in this world, the United States has yet to invent torpedoes, because that's still far from the dumbest plot you could have in a Call of Duty game. You break in, shoot a bunch of people, launch the nukes, and escape on a boat as everything around you blows up, which is a spectacle and the thing that really shows the Wii's limits. It's pretty short, but it's extremely linear, scripted. Me moving my boat slightly to the left instead of straight on was considered as abandonning the mission. The third mission does its best to try and keep the action high. A guy is dying, so you play as a Russian escort trying to take care of him. Except I don't know if Yuri swings that way, and Russian legislation prevents me from acknowledging anything if I want to keep a rating below adults only. Even though I don't give a shit if this video does get censored, so I shoot a bunch of people instead of dicking around with Soap. I don't actually know who Soap is, but he's an American. That means he's important and requires a helicopter extract. So we run around some city streets in a relentless barrage of bullets, which are fairly beautiful to look at, and just, Damn, these guys have some fancy cloaking technology on these buildings. It's hard to tell if I can actually shoot at something or not, and I get confused and died. I will say, even though I was praising the Wiimote's controls earlier, it's still a bit of a pain in the ass to aim with it. My second attempt went better, and we end up finding some kind of unmanned remote-controlled turret that only I could use because I'm the only one that could read Russian, which kind of makes sense plot-wise. I will give props here for using very accurate Russian using Latin lettering, which is a remnant of early 90s computing due to a massive non-compatible format war between a bunch of people trying to fit Russian letters into 8-bit space. A lot of the time, people just wrote with English letters because ANSI would always render properly, and it's nice to see some representation. Alternatively, they didn't have the HUD text in Cyrillic, which is also a pretty good reason to use English letters. So after this segment, you run through the one quiet bit, get blocked by 2 cinder blocks on the ground, run onto the construction site you just rode in on, but it gets blown up and you fall like 20 stories and... I'm sorry, I just can't play this anymore. There's 2 reasons for that, actually. It's not because I'm angry about something, it's not that I'm even emotionally invested, because this game didn't give me any breathing room to establish any sort of connection to the protagonist. You'd think me not caring about the game's plot isn't enough of a reason for me to give up on a game? And you would typically be right. It's an odd disconnect. Modern Warfare 3 wants me to always be on the edge of my seat, but I'm just not feeling it, Mr. Krabs. It gives me no motivation to keep playing it. I'm not exactly sure what's wrong with it either, because Modern Warfare 3 does have the Call of Duty formula nailed down. I just didn't like it, and the game was tripping over itself to make me not want to play it. The other reason why I'm giving up on this campaign is because it genuinely made me sick playing it. I know this sounds vague, but just for complete fairness in regards to my biases, it's not because I think the game is written poorly and being racist due to my prejudices against the franchise. It's not that I'm exhausted from the game always trying to be the most exciting thing since Sliced Hitler. Hell, it's not even that the actual gameplay starts to get really tedious with how many scripted sequences there are. No, it was the fact that the field of view is extremely small and the camera likes to weave back and forth, and I couldn't figure out how to mod that out of it. The game has a fantastic options menu that you wish most games would have on console, but no FOV slider. I know my TV is low resolution, but I'd rather make out less pixels than have everything be constantly in a pair of binoculars. I should probably say right now that I have absolutely no idea what happens after a guy's escaping the helicopter, so everything after this is gonna be made up. Why? Well, I like guessing plot lines. So, for my guesses, all the named Russians die. Yuri is ex-Spetsnaz or whatever, so I presume he's going to be involved in a double cross with either the villain or the Americans. Either way, he's dead. Soap was already hurt, so he's not coming back for a while, and either he's a wounded veteran or he dies later in the game. I'm willing to bet on the former, but this game ends the trilogy and I know it won't leave it vague. I don't know if there are other characters and I don't really care. I'm done with the story because, like most people, I didn't buy this game for its campaign, and since it's a nearly 10-year-old game, you can just spoil it in the comments. I don't care about it that much. So, what about the graphics? I don't mind graphical glitches, although buildings disappearing is the most extreme bug I've ever seen on a big budget game. What I do mind is that I can't see anything, and I mean that the game is way too dark. I'm not sure if this is because I'm splitting the signal between my Wii and PC capture card, but it's generally difficult to see what's going on in this game. I feel like my gamma settings are completely blown out, and it might have been. On top of that, it has a crap green color filter all over it. See, back in those days, developers didn't go outside, ended up stir crazy with 100-hour-long work weeks, and the entire industry collectively went crazy because of that and started slapping color filters all over everything, and they look really bad. They looked back then, they look bad now. Otherwise, this game's alright when it comes to graphics. They made an attempt at being photorealistic, but it barely misses a mark where it's in the uncanny valley if you accept that, yeah, this is a game. The textures are pretty fuzzy, the draw distance generally sucks, and it usually runs at 30 FPS, and even then it dips pretty hard sometimes. As a whole, I'd like to think I'm pretty lenient with judging games by their graphics, mostly because I care more about atmosphere instead of poly counts, and I'd say that Modern Warfare 3... yeah, you know what, it did a good job. It's pretty obvious that it's a massive downgrade from other editions of the game, but they accomplished what they set out to do. And now for the meat of the game, the multiplayer. Unfortunately, the meat itself was also affected by the green color tinting. It's not to say that there's something wrong with the meat, but it's been out for a decade and it's kind of gotten stale in the meantime. Activision's pretty predatory in their pricing for old DLC packs, which at this point should have been given away for free, but the Wii's version of Modern Warfare 3 takes this to an odd sidestep. It didn't have any paid DLC because the Wii's internal storage didn't allow for this to happen at all, but you need to download the free DLC in order to play online. The problem here is that the Wii Shop channel has been shut down for over a year now, and the only way to install it now is by pirating it and running it off a Wii channel installer. Or, if you're lucky enough to find a Wii that already has this patch installed. The pre-made classes suck in my opinion, and making your own gives you a sense of pride and accomplishment, except it takes like 30 minutes before you have the opportunity to do whatever you want given a handful of guns. Weapon customization's alright, although the different customizations didn't really affect them that much, at least in my opinion, but it gives you that extra little bit of control or potential placebo that you've always wanted in a game. Although I should probably mention, the 3 perks you get actually do affect your experience, and not by an insignificant amount. Changing them affects your class more than changing the attachments on your gun, but you don't really get a chance to find out what other people are running and plan to counterattack accordingly. Frankly, I'm not even sure if knowing anything other than their gun matters outside of being able to survive explosives. I preferred the M4 and UMP over anything else, even as I unlocked other weapons because of the aiming. Unlike in the campaign, online players don't stop to fire, so it becomes a lot harder to line up an accurate shot that I wouldn't have issues if I was on PC. I just ended up staying away from snipers and shotguns. I didn't use snipers because I can't aim for shit, and shotgun pellets like to play quantum entanglement with me, and they've probably transported themselves to World War I. Because I was also overcompensating hard in my aim, more bullets seemed like a better option, especially since everything still feels like a pea shooter and I like not taking 2 hours to reload my gun. Mind you, the time to kill is super short if you're able to line up a target. If you want super fast, crazy first-person action, hell yeah, this sets that note. Rarely does a fight last more than a few seconds, and even if you die, you're quickly back in the action. Granted, this does mean that the game has a feeling of if you shoot first you win, so it's not quite as skillful as it could be, but you could make it a good thing by saying that nobody's a bullet sponge. Upside, there's nothing that I'd say is flat out broken or unfair, even if you run into yet another claymore. It's mildly annoying, but there's no low skill meta that's better than any other alternative that ends up plaguing what few online games remain. While having balanced gameplay is appealing, the constant chaotic nature of the gunplay in multiplayer prevented me from wanting to hit even a first prestige. And yet, it also feels empty due to the Wii's limitation of 5v5 in online matches. The maps are designed to incentivize combat with a simple 3-lane layout with cover sprinkled about, and apparently the maps were made small for the Wii release, but the scale between them is way off and just ends up being a frustrating jog most of the time. It doesn't help that a lot of people hold specific angles, which is a very solid tactic in other games, but this isn't Counter-Strike. Modern Warfare basically demands frequent engagements if you want to have a fun time, and being shot in the back by someone hiding in a bush isn't fun. I'd say that the other modes are marginally better at this than just playing Team Deathmatch, but I've never seen a single person queuing for any other game mode. I kinda wish the game had bots so you could actually try the other game modes, even if your enemy is dumber at the game than I am, but that wouldn't really work because multiplayer already struggles in the frame rate department at times, and the game's peer-to-peer nature would make the host Wii explode trying to process bots. So yeah, unfortunately, the game ends up feeling pretty samey no matter what you choose, and the design of it doesn't make everything feel vastly different. Oh sure, you have to stay far from shotguns, close to sniper rifles, dead to SMGs and assault rifles, but it's really the biggest extent to any semblance of strategy here. Unfortunately, there's still a handful of hackers that play online. They're not too common, but I can't imagine being that kind of scum of the earth. I don't know who thinks to themselves, you know what? I'm gonna go and use cheats on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 online for the Nintendo Wii, and then you just think that's a good way of spending their Wednesday evening. It's not, but they might. I realize there's no protections against this, and Activision hasn't banned people from this platform in years, if ever, but like, look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that your life is ending up to be okay. It's one thing if you're trying to discover some things like unused map features and you're doing it in a lobby of one person, but if your desire is to ruin the gameplay experience of the 40 or so players at any given moment in a borderline dead game, you've got issues, and I'm not going to be the one to deal with them. Let's talk about the music. I'm out of ideas for talking about the online. It's a bombastic orchestra that tries to fit with the game's tone instead of trying to shine on its own. Or maybe it was trying to shine on its own and it fell flat on its face, because I can't remember a single track. No offense, Brian Tyler, but I've gone through your discography and the only music I can remember is the one to Black Flag, which I thought was better than the rest of the game, so that's a shining achievement as far as I'm concerned. I did think that the multiplayer theme for the game was really good, but as a whole, this soundtrack is just serviceable, nothing special. The biggest thing that the soundtrack told me is that the entire game is just alright. The gameplay isn't anything special, but it's alright. The graphics try their hardest, but as a whole, they're just alright. The multiplayer is very content-rich, but it's alright. The story is fucking ridiculous and I hate it, but if you're the kind of person who likes forgettable, meaningless shit, then it too is alright. That's not to say that I hate the game or I like the game. It's in this weird limbo where I suffer from no opinionitis after sunking a lot more time into it than I wanted to in the first place. I guess the best way to describe it is that it gave me gaming on Wii, because I have absolutely no desire to keep playing, which is weird. Typically, whenever a game is good or bad, it at least leaves some impact on me, but that's usually because the game cares. Modern Warfare 3 somehow felt like it doesn't give much of a shit other than being a spectacle. It was absolutely forgettable for me, even though by all measures it's an alright game. It does have a user score of 2.0 on Metacritic though, but that was because it was diagnosed with Activision pissed off their user base syndrome. I typically don't change my opinion after looking up other people's reviews, and that's kind of the point of an objective review, and if you really like Modern Warfare 3, well, I'm not upset if you think that my personal opinion is a sack of shit. What do you think this video was, unbiased? Half the reason why I played this game was out of spite. But hey, if you can hold your own opinion, I respect you. Not like I respect someone who did good deeds in their time in the military, which is kind of self-contradictory, or like how I respect my grade 11 literary English teacher, but I respect you more than the average person. Looking at other people's complaints, they said that the multiplayer itself was pretty bad and generic, and I'm not exactly sure what they were talking about. I felt it was fine. They mentioned that it was a rehash of the previous Modern Warfare, but the thing is, Modern Warfare 2 never came out on the Wii. As far as I'm concerned, this would have been a new experience for people who only owned a Wii, and it's not a bad one. It helps that nobody's actively shitting on the game in current year here, so you don't see a wave of hatred when you look up information about it, and nobody's sending death threats and roadkill to the developers' offices for daring to make a AAA game in the short span of 2 years. But I still don't really know what I think about Modern Warfare 3 even after making a script that was longer than my term paper was for Russian literature. I'm just gonna give it a rating of E. Why? Well, it's without the H, except the more I think about it, the more I'm warming up to the letter E. I'm intentionally going to try and ignore the haha Nintendo Wii E for everyone joke, because this game isn't for everyone. Honestly, I'm not sure why anybody would play the Wii version unless you want to not pay Activision. Holy fucking shit, it's $100 for the game and DLC? No, fuck off with that. The Wii version's like $3 on eBay, and if your Wii is modded, which it damn well should be, you can get online working with a little bit of software piracy. And I would have actually ended the review there, but surprise! You probably thought I didn't have an actual surprise. Welcome to the world of no more official support. While writing this review, Nintendo ended up changing some server-side configurations on their end, and now you end up with an error 23400 on every single Call of Duty game. Now, Activision servers are still technically up, but Nintendo's messed up configuration doesn't properly send your Wii's information to Activision servers anymore, so unless you use actual cheat codes to trick the system into sending fake data, you're not playing online anymore. It's a real shame too, because if you're the kind of person that would like this game, the online was worth giving a shot. I'm not planning on changing my final review score to E for nobody, but unfortunately you're gonna have a bit of a tougher time accessing online, and because of that, it's a wasteland now, so thanks Nintendo for killing off this game. I might not have really felt much about it, but it doesn't deserve to die because you can't set up an online authentication server properly. Or maybe I'm in the wrong and this game should die so people can play the new one? I guess this video is kind of a send-off for Modern Warfare 3 for the Wii now, except now I feel kind of bad about it because it's not really a good send-off. And as much as I hate to be a downer, I don't think we can do much about this. I've messaged Activision, people have messaged Nintendo, but if Activision decides that if Nintendo killed their end of the deal, they might think to kill the matchmaking that probably runs off a Windows 98 machine that they forgot about in their server room, so maybe even the cheat code might not work next week. So yeah, rest in peace, Call of Duty Wii. And if you're here for the ride, well, the next episode, I promise, is a game that you can experience fully. You know, outside of the whole war thing, this is a pretty nice walking simulator.